In this video, we're going to configure CodeLite to work with the C++ compiler on Ubuntu Linux. I'm running Ubuntu 22.04, which is jammy. I've already opened CodeLite. The first time you run CodeLite, you're going to get a setup wizard pop-up window that pops up just like this. If you don't get that, you can always go to help and run it from there. We do want to run this setup wizard, so I'm going to click next. I'm going to click C++ development and click next again. And I'm going to ask CodeLite to scan my system to find compilers. I'll click that button and you can see it found GCC 11, which was the compiler that we installed. Now I'm going to rename that to just GCC. That way it's consistent throughout the course, but I'll do that in just a moment. I'll select next. Here you can choose the color, whether you want a dark theme or a light theme. I generally use a dark theme, but I think the light theme shows up better on video, so I'm just going to leave this alone, and I'll select next. And on this screen, just click finish. Okay, so CodeLite will close down and open back up. And now what we want to do is we want to set up the compiler, and we're just going to change the name. So I'm going to come up to settings and go to build settings, and there you can see GCC right here. So I'm just going to right click and rename, and I'm just going to call it GCC. Just like that. And I'll hit OK. Perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to create workspaces. The way CodeLite works is it's got workspaces, and then in those workspaces, you can have many projects, each project being a C++ program. So it's a real nice way to organize your work. The first thing we want to do is we want to create a new workspace. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. I can click this big button right here right in front of me. I can also come up to workspace, new workspace, and I can go to file, new workspace over here. A lot of different ways to do it. I'm going to just click this button right here. Now I'm going to select the C++ workspace and click OK. Now it's going to ask me, where do you want to store your workspaces? You've got some choices here. You can put them on your desktop. You can put them in your documents folder. I'm going to put it right off of my home directory right there. And I'm going to create a folder there. Let me click over here to create the folder. And I'm going to call it workspaces. So I can create as many workspaces as I want in here and then projects within each of those workspaces. And I can have everything nicely organized. So I'm going to click create and I'll hit open. So now you can see that the workspace path is my home directory followed by workspaces. And the workspace name is going to be workspace 1 or whatever you like. Well, you're working on pointers. Maybe you want a pointers workspace and so forth. And make sure that the create the workspace under a separate directory is checked. And I'm going to click OK. And that will create my workspace. And you can see it right over here on the workspace view. You can see the workspace 1. Now what we want to do is create projects within that workspace. So I can right click on the workspace 1 and create a new project. Or I can come up to File, New Project. Again, a lot of different ways to do it. I'm just going to right click here and say New Project. And now we get this New Project wizard. We know that the path is that workspace 1 folder. That's where my workspace is. Now it's asking us for the project name. I'm just going to call it Project 1. Just like that. Very important. I'm going to probably say this more times than you want to hear it. But it's very important. No spaces, no special characters, no international characters anywhere. So don't start putting plus symbols and dots and slashes and dollar signs in these names because that will usually mess up the builds later. So just keep them really, really simple. Make sure that the create the project in its own folder is checked. Now the category we're going to select is console because we're going to be creating console-based applications. The type is going to be simple executable G++ right here. The compiler is GCC. That's the one we just installed and renamed. The debugger is the GNU GDB debugger. We only have one option here. And the build system, we've got two options. We're going to select CodeLite Makefile Generator. I'm installing version 17.3 of CodeLite. Previous versions had a default build system. It was called default. And it worked great, but in this version and going forward, the CodeLite developer removed that default build system. I don't know why I did that, but we have to deal with it. So we'll make a few adjustments to the way we create new projects, but it's pretty easy. Once we have all that, make sure all this is correct. You click OK, and you can see now that we've got a new project over here, project 1, and it's got a source folder, and it's got my main.cpp file in it. The main.cpp file is our source code. Now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go to settings, colors and fonts, and I'm just going to create maybe let's see, maybe we can set that to 20. That should be nice and big so it shows up good on video. And I'll select that and apply and then hit OK. All right, so now the font is nice and large. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete this. So I'm just going to copy it all and just press delete. Okay. Now you can see over here you have this black dot. That's telling you that this file has been changed. So that what's on disk is different from what you're seeing. Makes sense because we just deleted a bunch of stuff. So we want to be sure that whenever we see that, we save when we're done. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in a real simple hello world C++ program. The reason we do this is because it's simple, and if it runs and we see hello world, we know that our development environment is set up correctly. So that's the reason for doing it. At this point, just type along, follow along. All the C++ will be explained later. The point of this video is to make sure that our development environment is set up correctly. So I'm going to type pound include space left angle bracket IO stream and right angle bracket. Then I'm going to type using namespace std semicolon. There's spaces between using and the namespace and standard. Now I want to write my main function. Every C++ program has a main function, and that's where execution begins. So let's do that. We'll type int space main left paren right paren. And then we have an open curly brace. And you'll notice that CodeLite automatically closed the right curly brace for me. So that way they match. Make sure you spell main correctly. Make sure those are parentheses. Make sure you've got spaces where I have spaces and so forth. Okay, so now I'm just going to tab over and I'm going to type cout, 2 left angle brackets side by side, no space between them, and hello world. And I want that within double quotes. 2 left angle brackets again, and then the word ENDL for end line. Make sure that's ENDL and not END1. The L and the 1 look really similar. Then I'm going to return space 0 and a semicolon. That's it. That's our simple main. When we run it, we should see hello world display on the terminal. But before we run it, we need to configure this project and give it a few compiler settings. First thing though is let's save this. So you can come up here to File, Save File, or you can press Control S. I'm going to press Control S, and you can see that black dot is gone. It might be a red dot on your system. It was a red dot in my other system, but it's a black dot here. In any case, you're going to see that dot there when the file is dirty. In other words, when it hasn't been saved. I've made some changes, but I haven't saved them to disk yet. Okay, so now let's set up the project. I'm going to right-click on the project and select Settings. You can also just click on the project and select this wrench right up here. Does the same thing. At this point, my project settings window opens, and let's go through this. The project type is executable. The makefile generator is CodeLite makefile generator. The compiler is GCC. The intermediate directory is blank. The output file says project name. And sometimes you need to stretch this out just a little bit to see more stuff. And I think that doesn't happen on Windows or Mac, but it does happen on Linux sometimes. Let me stretch that out a little bit. So all of this is the stuff that we put in earlier. There's one thing that's really important is this one right here, the working directory. We want to delete that, the entire line, and we want to replace it with $ left parenthesis project path right parenthesis where the P in project and the P in path are uppercase. That's really important. Okay, that's the first part. The second part is I'm going to come over here to my compiler, click compiler, and right up here where it says C++ compiler, I'm going to click that line, and you can see these little button shows up with 3 dots in it. I'm going to click that. Then I'm going to come over here in the compiler options, and I want to choose Enable C++ 17 features. This one right here, Enable C++ 17 features stood equals C++ 17. That will tell CodeLite to use the C++ version of the compiler. That's it. We're done. We'll click OK. We'll click Apply, and we'll click OK one more time. At this point, we are good to go. Now, I'm going to make this full screen here so that we have a little bit more room to see what's happening. Now we're ready to build our project. The way that CodeLite works, since it can have multiple projects in this workspace here, of course, we only have one right now. We'll create another one in just a moment. It builds and runs the active project. And you can see the active project right there. It's bold and it's italicized. So if I have a bunch of projects, there's only going to be one that's bold and italicized, and that's considered the active project. To make a project the active project, you can select it, right click on it, and then come down here to make active, or you could just double click on it. Simple as that. Now we're ready to build this. So we're going to come up to build, and I'm going to select rebuild project, and I'll talk about all of the differences here in a future video. I'm going to select rebuild project, and the output window shows up down at the bottom. I'm going to stretch this out so it's a little bit bigger. And you can see right here, we're using the C++ compiler. We're building project 1, main CPP. We've got stood equals cppluS17 and all the stuff that we typed in. So this is great. We have a successful build, no errors, no warnings. Now I can run my program. So let me close this up again to give us a little bit more room down there. And I'm going to go to build, and I'm going to select run. Do I want to build and execute or just execute? I've already built it, so I'm just going to execute it. And we get a terminal window pop up, and it says, hello world, hit any key to continue. The hello world is our program. The hit any key to continue is what CodeLite puts in there, because otherwise it would just display that and close up the window real fast. So we press any key to continue, it closes the window, and we are done. So that's it. Simple as that. That's the way we organize this. In a couple of videos from now, I'm going to have a video that shows you how to create a project template so that we don't have to do the stood equals cppluS17 part, which saves us a little bit of time. Great. So let's create another project. And the second project is going to be basically the same source code. Let me, again, close this down here. So I'm just going to copy this source code. I'm going to press Control-C to copy. And I'm going to go to my workspace, and I'm going to select right-click, New Project. I get the same New Project wizard, and I'm going to create Project 2 in this case. Again, no spaces, no special characters, no international characters. Make sure that create the project in its own folder is selected. These settings should carry over from the last time we did this. So we've got console, simple executable G++, GCC, the GNU GDB debugger, and CodeLite makefile generator. We'll click OK. And now over here, you can see we have project 2. And it's got a source folder, and it's got a main CPP. Let me expand these so you can see that they are two distinct projects. Now, if you look up here, you know that this is the source code for project 1. You can see that right up here in the tab. And if I double click on this main CPP, it will open up next to it. And that's project 2. So this is project 1's main. This is project 2's main. So I'm just going to grab all that and paste the other one that I copied into it. And I'm going to say hello world from project 2. Notice the black dot up here. So I'm going to hit Control-S to save. Now I know that I've saved this. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set up project 2. So I'm going to click on project 2, click on the wrench. And right here, you can always see up here, it says project 2 settings. And this really got stretched out that time. There we go. Let's try that. So again, general, we're going to come right here to working directory. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to type $project path inside parentheses with the 2 P's uppercase. That's it. Then I'm going to go to my compiler, go to my C++ compiler options, click that button with the 3 dots, select enable C++17 features stood equals C++17, click OK, apply, click OK. Now we're ready to build, but we have to wait a second. We can't just build now, because if we build, the active project will be built. And that's project 1. You can see here. I don't want to build project 1. I want to build project 2. So what I can do is I can right click on project 2 and make it active, or I could just double click on it. And when I double click on it, you can see that it's now the active project. It's bold and italicized. So I can come back up to build. I can select rebuild project. We have our build output down here, and you can see that project 2 has been built right here. We've got all the options we want, so this is a good thing. I'll close this up, and now we're ready to run. So I'm going to go build and run. I'm just going to execute, And now we should say hello world from project 2, which is exactly what we see. We can press any key. I'm just going to press enter to close this down. So that's it. We've got our build environment working. Now we can start writing code. The other thing that I'd like you to do is go up to settings and preferences and come all the way over here on the right to miscellaneous and just click that. And in startup right here, there is a check for new version on startup. And I want you to uncheck that. Otherwise, CodeLite's going to ask you to upgrade to a new version every time there's a new version or a point release. My advice is to resist the urge to update. If you've got a working environment that's working and you're able to use it to develop programs, don't mess around with it. Just use the same development environment throughout the course. Sometimes we think that the upgrades are better. A lot of times upgrades are bleeding edge and they're full of bugs and they're not really worth the trouble. So once we've got a working development environment, leave it alone. It works great. I'm going to apply, click OK. And that's it. We're ready to go. Our build environment is set up. One more thing, when I build, it's possible that we have errors, right? Of course, we can have typos, we can have syntax errors. So for example, suppose I forgot that semicolon right there. I can come up to, first I'm going to save. And there's a little red arrow there that's telling me there's a problem. There's expecting a semicolon after namespace. That's not the compiler. That's the CodeLite's IntelliSense, if you will, which is kind of going through our code and looking at it and trying to help us out. But if we build, you can see that we have a syntax error. It says expecting a semicolon before the int. And we have an error and our program did not build correctly. So we don't want to run this program until we fix the error. There are a lot of errors that we can get, and we'll do a whole video on just the kinds of errors that you'll see, common errors. This is one that's really common, is forgetting the semicolon at the end. A lot of students spell IOStream wrong and they put IOSteam. So that's a problem. If we misspell main, you can imagine if we put the spaces between these two angle brackets, if we forget one of these parentheses. So there's a lot of places the syntax has to be just right. But again, we'll talk about all of this in the course. At this point, you're good to go. If you have any questions or any issues, please post them in the forum. Look on the forums because just about every question's already been asked and answered. But if you have a question that's not out there, please post it and I'll be happy to help you. The next video you should go to in this section is the video that shows how to create a default project template. So I'll see you there. Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, I will create a default project template that we can then use to create new projects from. This makes us so much more productive and a lot less chances for errors as well. So we're going to create the project, save it as a template. Then when we create new projects, we'll use that template as the base. So let's get started. You notice here that I've got the previous workspace that I was working on in the installation videos. So let me just create a brand new workspace. I'll go through the flow again just so that you can see what it's like one more time. The more you see it, the easier it becomes. So I'm going to click right here, new, create a new workspace. I'm going to select C++ workspace and click OK. Then I'm going to put it right inside my users folder, workspaces folder. I'm going to call this one workspace 2. Again, you can name that anything you like. Make sure create the workspace under a separate directory is checked. I'll click OK. Perfect. So now you can see our workspace has been created. Now I can right click on the workspace and create a new project. We can name this project, again, whatever we like. So I'll just call it project 1. Make sure that create the project in its own folder is checked. The category is console. Type is simple executable G++. The compiler is MinGW. On Linux and Mac, you'll choose GCC for the compiler. The debugger is the GNU GDB debugger. On Mac, you will choose LLDB VS Code. And then we want to select the CodeLite Makefile Generator as the build system. So I'll select and click OK. And that's going to create my project, as you can see in the workspace here with the source folder and the default main CPP, which we are going to remove and write our own. So let's do that real quick. Pound include IOStream, just like we did before, using, I'll put a space here, using namespace standard. Then we'll create our main function right here. We'll say cout, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to display default template. End line, Again, ENDL, not END1, and we'll return 0. That's it. Notice that this is red, so we need to save our project. I'm going to press Control S on Windows or Command S on Mac. And we've got just what we had before. Now, before we build this, let's set up our project. So I'm going to select Project 1 and click on that wrench. In the General tab, I want to go to the working directory right here, delete that, and replace it with Project Path. Just like we did before. Again, uppercase P for project and path. I'll press tab and it'll light up dark like that. You don't have to change anything else. In fact, don't touch anything else. It's just like it's supposed to be. We'll click on compiler now, over here on the left. Go to my compiler options and click those 3 dots in the button. And I'm going to select enable C++17 features right there, which is the std equals C++17. I'll click OK. Then I can come over to my linker. And if you like, you can put a dash static in the linker options. Again, dash static, no spaces in there. Mac users, do not do this. Leave that blank. Otherwise, you're going to get linker errors. So you can do this for Windows and for Linux, but Mac users, leave it blank. That's it. I'll apply. I'll press OK. Now let's make sure that we can build. So we're going to come up here to build, rebuild project. We've got a clean build, no errors. Let's run it to make sure we can run it. And it should display default template. It does indeed. So we've got a good build. We've got a good project. Now what we can do is we can save this project as a template and we can use it later to create new projects from it without having to do all this setting stuff again. So let's do that. Let's right click on the project one and we'll come down here to where it says save as template. Okay, let me do that one more time. Right click on project one, save as template. The project name, I'm just going to call this default project. You can call this anything you like. The project category, this says, where am I going to store this? I'm going to store it in a category called user templates. It doesn't really matter where you put it as long as you remember where you put it. So user templates works for me. And the description, again, can be anything. I'm just going to say my default project. There we go. And I'm going to press OK. Done. Now what we can do is we can create new projects from that template. So let's do that. I'll click on the workspace. I'll right click, new project. The project's name could be anything. I'll just say project 2. Again, remember, no spaces, no special characters, no international characters anywhere. The category now, what we'll do is we'll pick user templates. And for type, we'll pick default project, which is what we just created. Double check that you've got MinGW or GCC on Linux and Mac and the GNU debugger or the LLDB VS Code on Mac. They should be populated from the template. We've got CodeLite Makefile Generator, so you can just give it a once over and make sure everything looks good. And I'll press OK. Now you can see that project 2 has been created. However, project 1 is still the active project. So we can make project 2 the active project by just double clicking on it. And now project 2, you can see it's italicized in bold. So let me close this up here and let's open up our project 2's main CPP. Notice I got the default template code, which I wrote earlier. If I select project 2 and I click the wrench, you can see that in the general, it did not keep the project path, unfortunately. This is a bug that hopefully will be fixed soon. So in the meantime, we'll just have to type project path, just like that. But the compiler option did take, you can see the std equals C++17, and the linker option, you can see the static right here. So unfortunately, we still have to come in here and type project path, but it's a little bit less work than we had to do before. Apply, OK, and we're good to go. Now we can come over here to project 2, build it. And you can see the C++17 over here. You can see the static being used over here. So all this is good. And we can build and run. And I'll execute it. And it should say default template, just like we did before. We can obviously change this. And I'm going to say hello from project 2. I'll save that. And I can build and run again. There's our build. It's a clean build. Always be sure that you don't have any errors here before you run. I'll execute. and hello from project 2. So there you go. This makes life a little bit easier. Unfortunately, we still have to set that project path right here for the general options, but it's a lot less than we had to do before, and I think we're good to go here. So you can use this technique. So that finishes up the configuration of the default template. I'll see you in the next videos, and we'll start coding. In this video, we'll use the command line tools to compile and run our C++ programs on the Windows platform. Now, obviously, we need some sort of editor to type in our code. I'm just going to use Notepad, which is built into Windows, and it's really, really easy to use. Couple of things first. I've created a folder on my desktop called CPP Projects. In there, there's another folder called Project 1. Inside Project 1 is where we're going to put our C++ file, our source code. Now, there's nothing in there right now. Okay, I just wanted to show you where I'm going to be putting everything. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I just want to open up Notepad. And as you know, Notepad is just a real simple text editor. And I want to type in my C++ program right into this text editor. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, so I'm going to open up another window in a moment. So let's type in that main program that we should probably know by heart now. So I'm going to say include iostream. Then I'm going to say int main, open and close parentheses, open curly bracket. I'll close the curly bracket at the bottom. Remember, this is not an integrated development environment, so it's not really going to help me with syntax or with, closing open brackets automatically and so forth. I'll indent over a couple of spaces, and I'll say std, 2 colons, cout. 2 less than signs next to each other, which is the insertion operator. And we'll say hello Windows command line. And we'll close the string. Then we can also print a new line at the end. Let's do that. So we'll just say std : endl semicolon. That'll just print a new line. It brings a cursor to the next line in the output. Here we'll say return 0, like we always do. And let me just clean this up a little bit. That's it. We're done. We now need to save that program into that CPP projects 1 folder that I mentioned a minute ago. At this point, you have to be a little careful because Notepad works with text files. So it's going to use TXT extensions. We don't want TXT extensions. We want CPP extension. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and then I'm going to go to my desktop, my CPP projects, and my project 1 folder. Now you'll notice here where it says file name star.txt, that's what I don't want. So I'm going to go to Save as File Type and just say All Files. That gets rid of the extension. And now we could just say main.cpp. That's it. So I'm going to save my file as main.cpp, and I'm going to save. Okay, so if I go to my directory structure now, you'll see I have CPP projects, project 1, and there's my main. Now we need to compile and run this. The way we do that, and I'm going to leave this window open on here on the left for a moment. The way we do that is with a command shell or a command prompt. And all you need to do is just run command. And you'll see where it says command prompt. That's what we want to do. We'll just press enter and run it. And we get this window here, and I'm just going to move it over here on the right. That way it's nice and big. Now you'll notice, first of all, I'm in the wrong directory. I'm in the users Frank directory. I want to be in that folder that I created. So we can use the cd command to change directory. In this case, I want to change directory to desktop and press enter. And now you can see that I'm at the desktop. Then I want to change into CPP projects, and you can press tab and it will autocomplete for you. So I'm going to press tab and it'll say CPP projects. And then I want to go into project 1. There we go. There I am. So if I want to see what's in that folder, I could just type dir for directory listing. And you can see right there is my main CPP. At this point, I want to compile. The way we compile is, let me make this a little bit bigger so the whole line will fit on here. We want to use the C++ compiler, the MinGW C++ compiler that I'm assuming is already installed. We need to have that compiler installed. G++, that's the compiler. Now we need to have those options. -W, capital W, all. That turns your warnings on. Then -std equals C++ 14. that's using the C++ version 14 standard. And then the file we want to compile, which in this case is main.cpp. That's it. Now, when I do this, if there are no errors, it's going to create an executable file called a.exe. So let's do that. Okay, we got a clean compile. Remember, no news is good news, so no messages, that's a good thing. And we'll do dir again. And you can see right here we have a file called a.exe. That's our executable. I can run it by just typing a. And it says, hello, Windows command line, which is exactly what our program is supposed to do. If you want a different name for the output, we can just put another option on the command line. And what I'm doing here now is I'm pressing the up arrow, and it's going to go back through everything I typed. That way I don't have to type everything again. So you can go up or down using your up and down arrows. So what I'm doing here is same thing. I'm saying, call my compiler, turn on all warnings, use the C++ 14 standards, compile this file right here, main CPP, and then you can use the dash little o, lowercase o, and then the name of the file that you want to create, the executable. So let's say I want main.exe or whatever exe you like. And I'll press enter. And let me clear the screen. You can clear with CLS, and I'll do another directory listing. So now you can see I have an a.exe and a main.exe, and I can simply run main. That's it. This is really, really straightforward. If you have issues with IDEs, if you have issues with hardware resources that you can't run an IDE or just don't like IDEs, you could certainly run C++ programs this way. One thing to remember here, when you type your program into an editor such as Notepad, you may have syntax errors. So the way syntax errors will show up, and let me get rid of that semicolon there. Now, if I just say compile again, notice I got a clean compile. How can that be? I took off a semicolon. That shouldn't compile. I forgot to save it. You've got to be sure to save. One of the things that the IDEs do is they kind of do that automatically for you, so you don't have to think about it. But when you're working in a workflow like this, you've got to be sure that whenever you edit your file, you come up to File Save or Control S. Now you can compile again, and there's your error. So this is the way that you would work in this environment. Obviously, since it's not an integrated development environment, it's not going to get a little arrow here that says red and shows you where the error was, because these things are two separate programs that really aren't talking to one another. But there's the error. You can fix your error. If you make another error, let's say you forgot this quote mark right here. Again, I'm saving the program. I just did a Control S, and I can compile again. And there it says, warning, missing terminating quote character. Okay, you can fix that. I'll save again, and I'll compile one more time. We got a clean compile. We run main. We get the output. Okay, that's great. So that's pretty much what there is to it. It's not a big deal. Obviously, if you type G++, and this is a normal message right here, fatal error, no input files. It's asking me, what do you want me to compile? You haven't told me what you want. But if you get a program not found error, then go back to the installation video from MinGW that I created and make sure that your path is set correctly. Because what's happening is that Windows can't find G++. Okay, so that takes care of Notepad. Now, there's another editor out there, and I'm going to close this real quick. There's another editor that's free. It's called Notepad++, and I've installed it on the system on my computer here. And you can see it's right here, Notepad++, and I'll press enter. This is a programmer's editor. And let me open the file. I had a previous one open, so I'll open up a new one. Let's see, file, open, and I want to open that C++ file right here. There we go. So you can see that this is doing syntax highlighting, it's doing code folding, it's got line numbers. This is a programmer's editor, and again, it's called Notepad++. It's absolutely free. You can install it. You can do a Google search and install it on your system. Again, it's not an IDE, but it's a more advanced programmer's editor, which is really, really nice. And it's a lot nicer than Notepad. Notepad was never intended to write code with, but you can certainly write code with it. I'd recommend you use something like Notepad or Brackets or Atom or one of the paid ones like Sublime. There's a lot of really good text editors out there that you can find. Okay, so that wraps up this video. As you can see, if you've got issues with an IDE or if you've got issues with hardware resources, don't let that stop you. You can still learn C++ and you can still get your programs to compile and run really easily. In this video, we'll go over the steps necessary to write, build, and execute C++ programs from the command line on a Mac. All we really need is a terminal session and an editor. Now, as far as the editor is concerned, there are a bunch of editors out there. Some of them are free, some of them are paid editors. The one I'm going to use in this example is called Atom, A-T-O-M, and you can download it from the internet. And it's absolutely free, and it's a fine text editor. Now, before I do that, I'm going to create a folder on my desktop, and I'm going to call it CPP Projects. And within that folder, I'm going to create another folder called Project 1. And this is where we're going to store our source files. Okay, so now what we need is we need an editor and we need a terminal window. So let's create both of them. First, let's create the terminal session. So we'll go to Spotlight Search and type terminal and press enter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this terminal over here on the right so that it's right docked just perfectly. And I'm going to run the Atom editor now. Again, you can run any editor you like. And there's the Atom editor, and I'll close down some of these tabs here so that we're here from scratch. Perfect. And again, I'm going to just dock this over here on the left side. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create a file in that folder that we just created. So let's go to File, New File, and it's going to be a C++ file. So I'm going to save this right now so that Atom knows that it's a C++ file. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and I want to put this on my desktop. In my CPP Projects Project 1 folder. And I want to name the file main.cpp. That's it, I'll save it. And now we can start typing our C++ program. It's really straightforward. That simple hello world program is what we're going to write. So we're going to say pound include. And you can see now that we've saved it as a .cpp file, Atom knows that it's C++, so it's going to allow us to, it's going to help us out with the code highlighting and syntax highlighting. So I'm going to include IOStream. Then I'm going to have my main. I'll say int main, open close parens, and open curly, which it completes for me. And now here all I'm going to say is std, 2 colons, cout, then followed by the insertion operator, which is the 2 last stand signs together. And I'll just say any string. I'll just say hello Mac command line. And I'll terminate that string. And then I'll put a new line at the end so that the cursor goes to the next line when we do the output. So that's ENDL. And we'll return 0. That's it. That's the program. We'll save it. Now we need to go over to our terminal to compile and run it. When you open up the terminal, it defaults in your home directory. So you can see if you type pwd, that prints the working directory, which is users followed by your username. That's not where I want to be. I want to be in the desktop folder that we created. So we can use the cd command to change directory. And I'll just type desktop, and you can press tab to autocomplete. So now I'm in the desktop directory. Then I want to go into my CPP projects directory and finally into my project 1 directory. That's where I'm at. Now, if I want to know what's in there, you can just type ls, which gives you a file listing. And you can see there's main.cpp. That's this file we just created in the editor. What we want to do now is we want to compile this file. So what we want to do is we want to type G++. That's the name of the compiler. That'll execute the compiler. Then we want to provide the compiler the same switches that we did in the IDE. So we'll say dash capital W ALL. So that turns on all warnings. Then we want to write dash std equals C++14. That'll tell it to use modern C++, the 14 standard. Now we tell it what files you want to compile. In this case, I only have one, main.cpp. If you have more than one, you would just list them all separated by spaces. But here we've got main.cpp. That's it. That's all you need to do. You press enter. We get no error messages. No news is good news. We'll do an ls again. And you can see that now we've got a new file created called a.out. That's the default executable file's name when you don't provide a name. In order to run this, you just type ./a.out. When I press enter, we should see hello Mac command line. That's exactly what we see. That's this statement right here executing. It's as simple as that. Now, if you don't like the a.out and you want to provide your own file name, you can come up, and what I'm doing here is I'm pressing the up arrow and the down arrow. You can see it's going through what I've typed. So you want to go back to the statement where you ran the compiler and just type a dash, lowercase o, and whatever name you want your executable to be. And you press enter. And now if we do a directory listing, you can see that main is there. And if you want to run main, ./main. And that's it. We've created a file, a C++ program. We compiled it and we ran it using only the command line, no IDEs. And as I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of editors out there. You can use Atom, Brackets, Text Wrangler, TextMate, Sublime, and there's a bunch much more. You can just do a search on Google and you can come up with a bunch of examples of text editors. Okay, so let's talk about compiler errors now. I'm going to clear the screen here, and I can do that in the terminal by just typing clear. And let's get rid of that semicolon at the end here. Now, if I run the compiler again, you can see I got a clean compile. That makes no sense because I created an error here by removing the semicolon. Well, the issue is that I never saved this file. When you work with the IDEs sync everything up. So they realize that your source code has changed, so they're going to compile the latest version of it. Here, these two are two separate programs and they're not synced. You're the person that has to sync them together by making sure you save it. So in this case, I'm going to come over here and do File Save or Command S. Now when I come back here and compile again, I'll see the error, which says I'm missing a semicolon. So I'll add that semicolon. Okay. If I put a semicolon in here at the end of IOStream, which I should not have, I'll save it, and then I'll go and compile it again. You can see there's an extra token at the end of the line. It's complaining about it. So I can go back here, Command S again to save, and I can recompile. This time I'll get a clean compile, and I can run my main. That's it. It's as simple as that. If you don't have the resources to run an IDE, or you don't like the IDE, or you feel the IDE is confusing you and not really allowing you to focus on the C++, this is a great alternative. Pretty easy, pretty fast, and you'll be in business real quick. Video. We'll go over the steps necessary to create, build, and run a C++ program on Ubuntu Linux using only a text editor in the command line. So in this video, we won't be using any integrated development environment. First of all, I've created a folder on my desktop called CPP Projects. And in that folder, I've created another folder called Project 1. This is where we're going to store our C++ program. In this case, it's just going to be a main, a real simple test. So I'd like to close this up. And the first thing we need to do is we need some sort of editor to type in our program. Now on Linux, we've got gedit. So I could just come to search my computer and type gedit. And we can use that text editor, which is a fine text editor. It's real simple. It comes with your installation. There are many other text editors and programmer text editors that you can use, like Brackets, Atom, and many others, but this one is already here, so we may as well use it, and it works just fine. I've gone ahead and gone to Edit Preferences, and I just turned on line numbers, and you can set all kinds of different settings that you like. I made the font also a little bigger so you could see it. So it may look a little different when you start yours. So the first thing we want to do is we want to write this C++ program. So let's do include IOStream, just like we've done before. I'll leave a space and then I'll say int main, 2 parentheses, the open curly, and I'll close the curly while I'm at it. And now we'll just say, we could just press tab, we'll say std, 2 colons, cout, the insertion operator, which is the 2 less than signs, right together with no spaces. And I'll say, hello, Ubuntu command line. We'll close the string. We'll put another insertion operator, and let's put a new line at the end. That way our cursor will go to the next line when we do the output. And that's ENDL followed by a semicolon, and then we return 0, just like we always do. That's it. That's our C++ program. Now, it's important that we save this with the .cpp extension and not a txt extension. The C++ compiler does not like txt extensions, and you're going to get all kinds of weird errors. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to File, Save As. We'll find where we want to save it. We want to save it to our desktop, CPP Projects, Project 1. That's where we would like to save it, and I'll give it the name as main.cpp. Now, you'll notice a couple of things. When I name the file CPP, the editor is smart, so it realizes that this is not a regular text file, it's a C++ text file, so I'll save it. And notice what happened here. Notice the color coding. It knows C++. Again, it's not an integrated development environment, so it doesn't have a lot of hooks to the compiler and so forth. But you can see that now it's really helping me because I can see that my string is terminated. For example, if I get rid of that guy, then that's black, and it shouldn't be black. It should be a magenta color. Right? So again, I'm going to press Control S to save that file. Now we'd like to compile and run it. So in order to do that, we need to open up a terminal. So I'll come back up here and I'll say terminal. And that'll open up a terminal, which I'll pull down just right by here so we can run them together. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that if you do a pwd, which prints your working directory, I'm in home frank. I don't want to be in home frank. I want to be in this directory right up here that you can see desktop CPP projects project 1. So I need to change into that directory. We can use a cd command to change directories. So I want to go to my desktop, and you can press tab for completion, auto completion, and press enter. Then I want to type cd cpp projects. And then finally, project 1. And you could do this all in one line if you like. I just did it in 3 steps. So now I'm in the correct directory. If I want to know what's in that directory, I could just type ls, which gives me a listing of the directory. And you can see that my main CPP file is there. That's the one that I want to compile. So let me make this thing a little bit wider just so you can see what I'm typing here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to execute the compiler. So I want to say G++. That calls the compiler. That's the GNU C++ compiler. And I want to set some options. These are the same options that we would set with the IDE. Here, we're just going to set them as switches right on the command line. So I want to say capital W, ALL. That turns on all warnings. Then I want to say dash STD equals C++14. That's going to use the 2014 C++ standard, which is the latest one that's out there. Now we supply, what do you want to compile? Well, I want to compile the main.cpp file, main.cpp. That's it. So it's going to execute the compiler, turn on all warnings, use the latest standard, and compile that one file, main.cpp. I'll press enter. I got back no messages, which is good. As they say, no news is good news. If you have errors, it'll tell you. If you don't, it'll be nice and quiet. At this point, I'll do an ls again to see what's in our directory. And you can see that it's created a file called a.out. That's the common normal file, executable file that's created when you don't say, hey, create main or create some other name. To run it, you just type /a.out. And there you go. It says, hello, Ubuntu command line, exactly what we typed up here in our program. If you don't want the a.out and you want your own executable, then you can type that in, and I'll show you how to do that. What I'm doing now is I'm pressing the up arrow and the down arrow, and you can go through what you've typed in. That way you don't have to type it all in again. So you want to go back to the statement where you compiled and just type a dash lowercase o and the name of the file that you want to create. So in this case, let's just say main. That'll be my executable. I'll press enter. I'll do ls again. Now you can see that there's a main file right there, and I can now run main. And I get the same output. Okay, simple as that. It really is very straightforward. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind, since this is not an IDE, you've got 2 things going on here separately, right? You've got your editor here and your command line tool here. They're not really synced together. You're the one that's syncing them together. So if I remove this semicolon from my text editor and I compile again, I expect an error, right? I didn't get an error. The reason I didn't get the error was because I never saved the file. you have to be sure to save the file and then compile. The IDE sort of handle that magically behind the scenes. They realize that you've made a change, so it's going to compile the latest changes you made. This is different since they're not in sync. So you want to be sure that you can come up here and say File, Save, or Control S. Now I've saved it. Now I compile. Now I see the error. So you can see the error is it's expecting a semicolon, which I can replace. If I get rid of this quote mark and Control S, I'm saving again. Now I run. Now I'm going to get a different error, something about a terminating quote character is missing. So I can put that back in, Control S and save, and compile again. And we can run main one more time. That's it. So that's it. It's pretty straightforward. These are the steps necessary when you have a plain text editor and the command line. If you cannot install an IDE for some reason, maybe you've got minimal hardware requirements, you just don't like IDEs, or you find them too confusing, don't let that stop you from learning C++. You can still use a simple text editor like this and a command line tool, and you can see the command. You can see the command right there. It's really, really straightforward. If you've got multiple C++ files, which we will later on in the course, you just type them all in here. File 1.cpp, file 2.cpp, and so forth. It'll compile everything, link everything, and run it for you. Many times, if you're a consultant and you're working out there, you'll show up at a place and there's no IDE. You're working as a consultant. All you need is an editor and a command line, and you're in business. In this video, I'll show you a couple of options that allow you to run your C++ programs right in a web browser. Now, this is pretty nice because sometimes you're on the road, you don't have your computer with you, and you want to take the course and try out some examples. Or maybe you had an idea about an example, you want to try it out, but nothing's available. Or at your friend's house and there's no computer available there except a browser. All you need is a browser to run these. One example is if you open up your favorite browser, I'm using Chrome here, you can type in cpp.sh, that's the URL, and you get the C++ shell. Now, both of these examples I'm going to show you are rather limited compared to obviously running on your own computer with an IDE and so forth. But they're really, really handy when you need to try something out really quickly without having to install a thing. So in this case, cpp.sh is the C++ shell. You can type your program right in here on the browser. And you can see here I've typed in the Hello World program. And you can set options. You can set your C++ 14 options, your warnings to a W all like we have in the examples. And if you want to run your program, you could just select run and it's going to compile and run it at the same time, which is pretty nice. Also, if the program asks for input, which we'll get to a little bit later in the course, you can set that to interactive mode. So you'll be able to type into the program, which is kind of nice as well. So in this case, I want to run the program and you can see it's compiling, program is running, and the output is hello world right here. And the exit code is 0, which is our return 0. That's pretty nice. Now, you can get a URL, which gets a URL to what you did, and you can click on that URL and you get the program that you wrote back. So that's obviously it's storing it somewhere. I'm not sure where or how long it's going to be available, but you can figure that out if you like. That's one example. Another example is webcompiler.cloudapp.net. This is a Visual C++ compiler running in the web. It's a Microsoft compiler. And you can see that they've given you a sample program here. Now, this text is pretty small. Again, it's a browser, so I'm going to make my browser a little bit bigger so you can see it, and then I'll make it a little smaller again to run it. So you can see here it's including IOStream. It's using a namespace, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and it's outputting hello world. And let me make this a little smaller again. So when you run the program by clicking this purple button down here, there's your output right up here in this black window here, hello world, which is pretty nice. And you can set your compiler flags however you like. So in this case, I'm setting the warnings to all, and I'm setting my standard compiler to C++ 14. So I'll close that down. And so as you can see, this is a pretty nice option here. We can, if we get a compiler error, let's say we forget that semicolon and we run, then the compiler error shows up down here. It says in function main on line 7 right here. There's a semicolon expected. We actually get a little red little X there that tells you the error is right around here somewhere. So you can fix your error and run it again. And there you go. There's your hello world. So again, these are some web-based options. They're not perfect. You can't really save things and edit and do all kinds of good stuff, but you can run a lot of the programs that we're going to talk about in this class right in the C++ shell on the web.